Today we're here with Denisha Imani, Water to Spirit founder, CEO, and author of the children's book series, Butterflies and Me. Today we're going to talk through each of the books, her inspiration for them, the characters, as well as the future of what she hopes for both Water to Spirit and Butterflies and Me, and how it has impacted the children and community that she's worked with. So, Denisha, great to have you.
Thank you.
And I mean, really just lay it out. What was the reason that you decided to create a children's book? Plenty of people write books.
Mm-hmm.
They go through things.
Yes.
And they accomplish things in their lives and they write books, but children's books is something that not a lot of people really dive into. So what was the thing that made you just be like, I have to write a children's book, especially one so profound and focused on benefiting the children that actually read it?
Well, the truth is, I actually originally didn't realize that I was a writer until I had a dream where I was conversing with God, and He told me to write a children's book and to use the gifts and talents that He gave me to help heal His children, and within that He would take care of my healing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I told my husband, I said, God told me to write a children's book. He said, well, then that means it'll be successful. And I said, I've never written a children's book before. How am I supposed to do that? And he said, just let the Spirit lead. And letting the Spirit lead is what I did. So it is an anthology, 4 different characters. And when I thought about butterflies, I literally thought about how fragile and animated butterflies are. When you look at a butterfly, the colors, but if you pull on the wings too hard, then the butterfly will never ever be able to fly again. So that's kind of how I see a child's mental health. So that's why it was also important to incorporate the affirmation of you're special, strong, and you did nothing wrong. So I'm just doing what God told me to do.
Right.
And I appreciate you saying it was profound. You are a mother who read the children's book. I would love to know what you think as well when you read the book, and how do you feel that it can help your children potentially as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's very surprising to hear that you did not see yourself as a writer. That it just was not in the books at all.
You're right.
Because they are extremely well written.
Thank you.
They are 100% from the heart.
Thank you.
And when I first read them, not an exaggeration, I cried with every story. I also have experience with all 4 characters, like truly connected with them. And it was, especially getting to the end of each story, which we'll dive into each of them here in a second, but getting to the end and having all of them find that aid that they needed, find that guidance that they needed, and just thinking about like how different things could have been if one adult in my life realized that I needed help. And so I 100% connected with all aspects of the book, and it was very meaningful. And I think that that's the thing, all 4 stories are extremely relatable. I know that I'm curious to hear about your experience and the people that you have shown the book, but I know that just from my personal experience, there are a lot of people who have this sort of notion that children aren't ready for this.
That's what's frustrating to me, because children face more adversities than we actually acknowledge, because we choose to. I feel that ageism goes both ways. Mm-hmm. When I was doing youth programming, they would say, well, you probably don't remember, but... And I'm like, remember what? Well, I have a crush on this boy, and I do remember being in the 6th grade, you know. I do remember liking a boy, but not knowing how to approach this situation. You can talk to me. Yep. And I think with being grown now, it's one of those things where it's like, well, children, they don't pay no bills. They don't know what stress is. And from my own personal childhood, That is not true at all.
Right.
So what I wanted to focus on in the books is just make sure that there is that dialogue where children can learn to advocate for themselves, and teachers know how to recognize the signs within their students. And so that's where I felt that it was important to kind of stop the idea that children are not prepared for something when they are already going through it, which is why the statistics for mental health for children are what they are, so poor.
Right.
It is the adults, I feel, that kind of get in the way of youth maximizing their full advocacy for themselves with their mental health.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in the book, there are 4 characters who deal with ADHD, depression, anxiety, and PTSD.
Correct.
And they all are from different backgrounds,
Correct.
all have different families, different stories.
Yes.
Did you have certain inspirations for each character? Where did you come up with, okay, these are what their names are going to be, this is what their qualities are going to be, because they are very detailed.
Thank you.
In your, Javier is leader of the soccer team.
Yes.
Lulu has a very deep connection with her family and ancestors, and you are very specific in pointing that out. And I believe to allow children to make that connection with the characters. So where were you able to kind of pull that from?
Well, again, though we are speaking of mental health, we're also speaking of spirituality. And I'm a firm believer that God gives us spiritual gifts. And one of mine is when I sleep, characters come to me and tell me their own stories. I know some people may be like, okay, does that mean she's schizophrenic? No, it's no different than what Toni Morrison said, that when she would isolate herself and characters would come to her and she would just close her eyes and begin to write. That's no different from me. I wanted to give these children the opportunity to speak to me, and that's why it was so easy. It only took me 10 minutes to write the book. It really did. It specifically because I invited, once God told me I had permission to do these books and write these characters, I literally was just minimizing the characters of 4 for the anthology. There were actually originally much more characters, but it was just felt that 4 would be good enough.
Right.
So when they would come to me, they were just telling their stories, and I felt that what was so beautiful about the stories was that they all had their own gifts.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer that when incorporating healing, it is important for youth to first discover their gifts. Lulu, for example, her grandmother died of cancer, and she is a Native American. And the way her and her grandmother would connect was her grandmother would tell her stories about her ancestors.
Right.
So when her grandmother passed away, transcended, right? No one really ever dies. She learned that too. That's what an ancestor is. That her ancestors are still around. To honor her ancestors, to honor her grandmother, she began to start writing those stories that her grandmother would tell her about her ancestors and share them with other kids and other people. And that was her way of honoring her grandmother and utilizing her gift of writing and creative writing.
Right.
So again, no different than what I did when I closed my eyes and had that conversation with God. So I think it's important that I feel that that's what psychology is actually missing, incorporating the gifts of the individual to be able to heal, right?
Yeah.
If I sing and I love to sing, I want to be able to sing about what I'm going through.
Right.
I want to be able to, if I dance, I want to be able to dance as I am healing in my process, right? In my process. And so I just felt that it was important to do that. And that's why with the Practitioner Tools Kit, I felt that it was important for adults that would be the first thing that they would do, is recognize the gift of their client or their student or whomever, and then go from there and then start that process.
Right. And I'm actually really happy that you brought up the psychology of it, because I unfortunately feel like a little bit of the reality of people who might see this book are, well, who are you to write about this? Like, why are you, like, you obviously, you know, they turn over the back. You don't have a PhD. You don't have a master's in psychology. You don't take on clients. Who are you to write about all of these different mental illnesses? So what personal connection do you have to writing, especially about the specific ones that you chose? Like you said, there were numerous characters that helped you choose which ones to kind of focus on.
I would say lived experience for sure. I think that it is, though I do have a bachelor's degree, not specifically in psychology, I still believe that lived experience is something that cannot be matched.
Taught.
Yeah, it can't be taught. What someone has learned is what something that I can teach from a subjective experience, right? Unfortunately, I feel with education, people with masters and PhDs, you have to objectify, you have to remove the actual person because you're just looking at statistics and numbers, right? Stories, but are you literally hearing and seeing and experiencing what that individual is going through?
Right.
No, you're not. So I think my lived experience. Now with the characters, when I was in foster care and when I was also in group homes, it was always interesting to me when people would communicate which children had challenges and which ones didn't. We all did,
Right.
Because we were removed from the home, right? Right. So it's like obviously we all do, but some of the behaviors were stigmatized as this is a bad child. You know, for example, with the boss, one of his struggles was he has ADHD, so it's not that he wasn't intentionally disrespecting the instructor. It was not that he wasn't intentionally not paying attention. It's just that he had ADHD. It was undiagnosed, and there were no system put or strategy put in place to assist him with his challenge. But what he had was an incredibly active imagination, right? And with that active imagination, he would go back to, oh, I remember when this was like this and this was like this, but what if? And he's trying to read, but the words are flying off of the pages, right? So with a boss, it was important for me to put in his story that he's not a bad boy.
Right.
What he does need is a teacher and his parents to recognize that he is special, strong, and did nothing wrong, and that he is intelligent. It's just that he is deferentially abled than the other students in the class.
Right.
I don't like when people say disabled or different. There's deference.
Right.
He's still human. He is still like other children. It's just the difference within how he thinks and how his brain process is where the care needs to be taken seriously, right, with the appropriate measures. So I remember, again, in group homes where kids would be sent home from school. He's not paying attention. He's not doing this. Or he gets up in the middle of class when other kids are still writing and things like that. And it's just like, okay, well, maybe he just, you know, there's reasons for it. And then I think if we start to humanize our youth and humanize that they have adversity instead of having somewhat of a ego that dismiss the challenges of our youth, then we can begin to close the gap and recognize that we can be doing better as adults advocating for our youth mental health, where maybe when you and I were children, we didn't have to fight so hard to be heard. So the affirmation, I feel, is not only important for the youth, but important for the adults who didn't have what I'm hoping moving forward in the future, every child has. Right. And understanding that they're special, strong, and did nothing wrong. And the adults understanding too, like, I might have missed this, but now that I've read the book, I see it. You know, and I can start my healing process within that too.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So what have you, not just for Butterflies and Me, I know that has a lot of wonderful reviews, But I am more curious as to, you've taken these into organizations, schools,
Yes.
everything like that,
Yes.
including both the practitioner's guide and the youth workbook that
Correct.
has actual activities
Yes.
that kids can work through, they can self-reflect and really display their own healing process.
Yes.
Honestly,
Yeah.
what has been the response to that?
Well, the youth love it. Most adults love it as well, but because there are systems put in place where, I'll give an example. I did an author visit at a school in Omaha, Nebraska, and I require a school social worker or school counselor to be present.
Right.
None of the students knew that they can go to a school counselor to say that they are being abused, to say that they are suicidal, to say that they're being hurt in any kind of way. And when I asked the school counselor about that, she spoke about how she wasn't comfortable, and a lot of the other school counselors aren't comfortable going into the classrooms with inner city youth. And I feel that mental health is an epidemic.
Yeah.
You know, if we can say COVID is an epidemic, we can definitely say that mental health is an epidemic as well.
Agreed. Yeah.
If your job is to advocate for the youth and provide families of resources, but you are not doing that because of lack of comfortability going into the classroom, rather if it's an inner city classroom or not, you are not doing your job.
Right.
And I had to give lived experience of saying that if I knew when I was being abused as a child that I could go to a school counselor and this could stop,
Yeah.
but instead I'm going to other individuals, help me, you know, and not even knowing as a child that everyone is a mandatory reporter, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lack of communication, there's a lack of dialogue, the lack of humanization, and so she felt that I should have been more understanding that the school system is not prepared to engage with parents and families, or even foster parents on the mental health of children.
Yeah.
And she wanted me to be more understanding of that. I can't be understanding of that when during the author visit, a young girl comes up to me and she waited until everyone was like in the corners, like talking to themselves about the book, and she says, I tried to kill myself 6 times already. The school year hadn't even been 3 months and she had already tried to kill herself.
Yeah.
And she told me that, and I called over the school therapist, like giving her an example of this is why it's important to be in the classrooms. And as she told me, okay, so then I'm going to call mom or call mom and dad and say, hey, your child said that they want to kill themselves. What's going on at home? And then if I'm prying as someone and I'm not already comfortable with that, and they might feel that I'm prying, and then the child may receive some horrible discipline at home. And these are true. This is true.
Yep, absolutely.
You know, in some cultures, it's what happens in this house stays in this house.
Yep.
We'll get to that one of these days too. But she just said they're not prepared. And I feel that the practitioner tools can start that process of preparedness, you know, and it is unfortunate that the school system, as she stated, we're concerned about test scores, we're concerned about, attendance, but test scores and attendance mean nothing if maybe I don't get, the only time I eat is the breakfast program and lunch program,
Right.
and the after school program, right? And so.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
Because if, what we're prioritizing in the adult world is this finally
Yes.
understanding and accepting that the mental and physical well-being of adults produces more work, like better work.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we can't see that correlation with children.
Yeah.
And it's, yes, I hope that, I agree with you, I hope that things like the Practitioner School Book and things like that are able to get those conversations started and allow children to actually have safe places.
Yes.
And I think that that is something that a lot of adults, especially within the system itself, are, they think, you know, because I am a social worker, because I am a teacher or whatever, I am the safe place, not realizing that that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, I call it the messianic complex.
It's
like
the,
that God complex,
yeah,
you know,
and the symbolism over the actual action.
Substance, yes. And that's why with the workbook, I made it a point to make sure that even adults can work with the self-esteem workbook with that youth. They can do it together.
Right.
And what's important with that is you're actually building that relationship, you're building that trust, you're building that protection, you're building that safety network. When I was doing a speaking engagement for for a university in Omaha as well, it was a social work program, grad students, and I asked everyone, I said, well, raise your hand if you're willing to be that person that someone, a family, or an individual can go to where they truly need you in a way that maybe you have learned is not necessary, that you don't need them. For example, are you the person that they can call and say, hey, I am not safe today. I am not, and I would say more than half of the students raised their hand and said that they were not comfortable being those people.
Why are they in social work then?
That's what I asked. I said, why are you in social work? And they said, well, one individual said, well, I believe the system is working. I just believe that it is the people who make it difficult for themselves, who make it hard for themselves. And it was quite interesting that they're in a social work program, but yet they have no understanding of life. Right? Of life happens, things happens, and there is a system, multiple systems put into place strategically to make things difficult for certain groups. That's why some groups are considered marginalized, right? So for me to have to utilize, and that's where my lived experience come in.
Right.
You know, that's where my lived experience come in. Well, the parents are being combative. Well, have you ever thought that culturally this doesn't connect with this family?
Right. Because
this idea of this is a framework that should work for all families is not true if a particular group or groups have historical trauma, social trauma, familial trauma. So if I get my healing in the church and the judge requires us to, the family, and this is what happened when I was in foster care, we had to do therapy. They felt that my mom was being combative. And like my mom would say, I had 4 kids by the time I was 21. What can someone that does not look like me, does not have any experiences like me, and is younger than me, gonna tell me what it's like to raise 4 kids as a single mom in this society with all of the baggage and trauma that I've had that is not my fault, right? How can you tell me anything? And I agree with her. How can you, if you have a system put in place that says all families should be like this? Well, then let's talk about some of the historical trauma where some of our families were forced to be broken up. And this is not debatable for the simple fact that history speaks for itself. What's happening now to Latino families, Latino and Chicano and Hispanic families in the U.S. right now. We can speak about that right now, right? So what has happened to Native American children, right? What has happened, you know, what is still happening as well. So we have to tell the truth, no matter how much it hurts, no matter who it may hurt. We have to remove these boxes, and this is my pedagogy, we have to remove these boxes that we put around ourselves and others. And when we remove these boxes, we will then recognize the true human experience. The diversity is the true human experience.
Right.
And when we recognize that diversity is the true human experience, then we can then begin to build the pyramid of what we need to do as human beings to be better.
Yeah.
Not just for ourselves, but for our youth.
Yeah.
Because they are watching us.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And they are also tired of being neglected, ignored, and attacked, and then told that they have to fix the problems that we as adults created for them or dismiss.
Yeah. And they know that it's happening.
Yes.
That's something that I've heard of,
Yeah.
like, kids don't know any better. But I can guarantee
They're smarter.
that when, yes, I can guarantee that when they go
Yeah.
to school
Mhm.
and they start seeing how other kids live, they start
Yeah.
hanging around their friends, they know
Yeah.
from an extremely early age
Yes.
if something is off.
Yes.
If their experience is different, especially to an extreme.
Yes.
And as a mom,
Mhm.
and as somebody who has lived through experiences such as that,
Yeah.
I 100% believe that as we move into what the future of both Water to Spirit and specifically these books are trying to create, this is a catalyst for that.
Yes.
This is the catalyst.
Yes.
The very first
Yes.
little toe dip in the water
Yes.
of, we have got to get at the very basics of it. We
Yes.
have got to get kids and parents talking to each other.
Yes.
And this is how they create that communication.
Yes, absolutely. And I think not only that, but also I am always willing to go into the schools. I am always willing to do workshops. I am always willing to be a part of that catalyst as well.
Yeah.
Because I believe what we at Water to Spirit can offer though is not only lived experience but substance.
Yes.
And I feel that the world is suffering from symbolism right now, and I think when we can provide them of substance, it feeds the soul. And I call it milk, water, and honey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's all you will need. And honestly, hearing the voices of the youth should speak for itself.
Yes.
And I feel that that is the power. That's where the power of these books come in. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You have been great.
Thank you.
Well, thank
You've
you.
also been great. Before we completely head out, I do want to say that these books are available on Amazon for purchase. And you can learn more about Denisha, Water to Spirit, everything that she's kind of doing within the community as far as schools, programming, nonprofits, but also even on the legislative side of everything at the website watertospirit.com.
Thank you.